Hello everyone, my name's Daniel Rizzo, and I'm here to teach you about sourcing in DBQs. So, sourcing, I was able to find two definitions. One was from the College Board, and one was semi from the dictionary slash prime first-hand experience. But the College Board sourcing, they want us to explain how or why the point of view, purpose, historical situation, or audience of a document is relevant to an argument, which is all based around the DBQ because they give you a question. You have to come up with a thesis or a side slash a claim on it, and you essentially have to answer it, support it with the documents that they give you, which varies on the amount that they give you, and try to essentially blend in all those texts and synthesize into an essay answering the question. Now, for the dictionary definition is to obtain information from a particular source or place. I was confused on what sourcing meant in both sides because I somewhat know sourcing as finding text evidence, or that's how I imagine it is. But of course, the College Board has a different idea of what they want for the AP World History. So, essentially, in order to essentially source in a DBQ, you first, of course, have to start off with reading the question that you're trying to answer, provided by the test or the task. This can be used for practice too. You got to read each document after you essentially read the question. You may take notes or write about ideas or write out ideas about the sources. And then 3, this is where you create your thesis. Essentially, this is where you create your side, and then you start picking out how the evidence from the sources to use. And of course, by the definition of the College Board, while finding evidence, you think about the sources aspects from the context, audience, or purpose. Of course, that's where that part comes in. And then, of course, you may start writing and weaving your evidence into the essay by adding commentary. Essentially, trying to elaborate and try to tie it back to your thesis. And of course, one major tip is go beyond than simply stating the evidence. Try to tie it into your thesis. Try to use it more rather than just blatantly throwing it out there. Of course, not many students. That's a very common mistake students would make. Of course, when you're sourcing, you have to think about all these questions, or these 7 questions. What is the question we are responding to? What is the historical context shaping the issues in this question? What is the author's point of view? What is the relationship between the author and the event? Who is the intended audience? What did the author hope the audience would think, feel, or do in response to the documents? And what is the format / medium of the document? A little rundown. So essentially, first one is just what's the question? What are we working on? Number 2 is what's happening around the time, or what's the historical context, just what's going on. Number 3 is what the author's point of view, essentially what they're thinking, what's their mindset, and how is the author related to the events, and who is the author writing to. And number 6 is essentially author's purpose. What does the author want the audience to essentially be and or feel after reading the documents. And of course, the format and medium could be from a picture to a cave painting to a biography, speech, all that sort of type. And of course, this is a little thing to remember to help you out in sourcing. So essentially, SOAPs is an acronym that stands for subject, occasion, audience, purpose, and speaker. Some people may remember this from AP English language arts, in which you had to analyze and try to find the rhetorics of a piece. Same thing applies here, since we are still using rhetoric. Excuse me for that. Of course, did a nice little thing to help you break down the piece, the document, and getting there faster. Of course, here's some do's and don'ts. Essentially, the do's: analyze the document. Make sure you fully understand it. And of course, this ties into the last part down here, where essentially you have to look at all aspects of a document. The next one is considering all parts of the document. Of course, that's another one that I had to repeat it. Put a star next to it if you need to. And then one thing is to synthesize all the documents given. So don't try to like build your DBQ based off three documents. Essentially, try to mix and match or weave all of the documents together in order to build your argument. And of course, this ties into the next one: build your argument with strength in mind. Usually start off, well, there's a few ways that you can organize it, but usually you put your weakest link in the middle and sandwich it by your strongest ones. Either that, or you start building up to your strongest argument. Of course, introduce your quotes or introduce the context. So you gotta describe the document before you start using it and how it plays into your argument. Of course, don't just stay at the surface of the text. Don't do that. Don't just like, oh, he said this, so it must not mean nothing, and I could probably use it. Of course, ties into the next one where you just randomly put text evidence in your answer. Never do that, because you never know if that text evidence might not support your thesis. Of course, another big no-no, just using one document. They give you anywhere between 3 to 7 to 10 documents, and you're just basing everything off one document. Not even a DBQ at that point, I'm sorry. Of course, don't organize your work in a weird way. Make sure it makes sense to the reader. And of course, this goes on to randomly putting text evidence into your answer. Randomly plopping the evidence without explanation. So make sure you introduce it at least, or describe the circumstances. So that's a quick little list of do's and don'ts. Common mistakes: of course, not using all the source's contents, or the sources in general. Not breaking down each source side document, so you can sometimes never have a coherent argument or side. Taking notes of the sources. Taking notes of the sources or paraphrasing for easy. That should be under do's, but just scratch this one out. One of the common mistakes is not building up enough evidence to support a claim. And of course, these last two are the big ones. Discarding visual sources. Visual sources or documents. Of course, I'm using them semi-loosely related because they somewhat, to me, feel the same thing. Of course, that may be different to someone else, but discarding visual documents / sources. Just because they give you a picture doesn't mean you can just throw it away. Just make sure you understand what's going on in the picture. It might be like a little image of Hammurabi's code, or a picture of Hammurabi, or one of those statues that Hammurabi has. And of course, misunderstanding a source is really big mistake, because then it throws you off the side and of course weakens your argument because you're not listening to it to its full extent. Of course, some of my sources was 2 YouTube videos that sort of helped me understand how to break down the sourcing and what they wanted. And of course, this College Board themselves is a DBQ scoring guide, so I just went ahead and got the definition from them about sourcing. And of course, sourcing is a very important point, or is one of the points you can gain on the DBQ section. Just like the ELA literature and language tests, where essentially they score you based on the criteria. And most of it is similar to English Language Arts, the AP, because it's like they're giving you multiple sources, especially question 3, which is the synthesis essay, where you get multiple sources and then you have to try to use them to your advantage to essentially make a claim about a question. So that's how I feel about this. so that most of the stuff feels familiar to me. And yeah, hope you enjoy it. Of course, I recommend watching the 2 YouTube videos that are here because they're helpful in understanding what they want you to do. And overall, I learned quite a bit from it. So this will be the end of the quick little video. Thank you, and see you next time.